hi. If you haven't heard already, my name is Bhavan. I work with a company called Rainmaker.
Bhavan, you're sexy.
I already know that, but I'm also married a little late. We work with the legal profession. We work with legal professionals from around the country. We also work with people who are interested in the law or affected by the law. Now, a lot of the times that includes lawyers, a lot of the times that includes people who make creative works, who create intellectual property but don't exactly know how to go about protecting it or maximizing value out of it. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of things that we do. We run a number of training programs, we run a number of online educational programs. A lot of these are free right now, a lot of them on IP, so if you're interested you should log onto our site and look at those programs. Another set of things that we've been trying to do over the past few months is to create stuff like this. I don't know if all of you guys have had a chance to see some of these posters that are lying around. But what we do is we try and make things like posters, comics around legal issues, talking about, let's say, very important cases or a very important aspect of the law, and try and get people interested in those kind of things, try and tell people a little more about those issues, things that they may not know about. In the course of what we do, we obviously create a lot of intellectual property as well. Now, how exactly you go about protecting that IP, how exactly you go about commercializing that IP, it really completely depends on what exactly you want to do. And we'd asked for a lot of questions from people before we did the event. Most of the questions, there seemed to be some amount of confusion about what exactly IP is, what exactly a copyright is, what exactly a trademark is, what's the difference between these two things, when you can get what. So what I thought I'd do is to just walk you through about 5 minutes of answering some of those questions that have already popped up, and then see if there's anything specific that you guys want to talk about. There's one bunch of things that the law says, and that's fine. There's a completely different world when you're out there negotiating with someone or trying to protect what you've done. The real answer lies obviously somewhere in the middle. It's important that you know both sides so that you can reach the kind of solution that you want. Okay? So, button at any point of time, if you have any questions, let me know. We'll take them up as we go along as well. But I'm just going to, like I said, walk through a basic primer on IP, tell you what the idea is, what the difference between a copyright and a trademark is, and how you go about registering or using any of these things. Right? Let's just start with a very, very fundamental concept, intellectual property. Pretty straightforward. Define it. Anyone. What is intellectual property? Is this poster intellectual property? Should be. That clip that you just saw, is that IP? Yeah. Is the name of this restaurant IP? Is the brand name Coke or Pepsi IP? Should be. How different is it from any other form of property? Suppose I own a house. What's the big difference? What's the big difference between owning physical property like a house and owning IP, intellectual property? What's the big difference between these two things?
IP is here, I can't show it unless I kind of bring it out in words or in pictures.
Okay, super. So IP is something that comes out of your head, something that comes out of creative effort, something that comes out of your mind. Most people stop there. And that, I think, is where the danger really begins. That's one of the first things that everyone needs to be completely clear on. You can't stop by saying that IP is just something that's a product of intellectual effort or something that comes out of your mind. Unless you can actually show it in some form, unless you can bring it out and show it to people in some form, it's pretty near impossible for you to prove that you own this IP or you could do anything with it. Okay? That's the first basic thing. IP itself is divided into many, many different forms. And that's not just technical stuff. Everyone's heard of copyrights, everyone's heard of trademarks, everyone's heard of patents. These apply to different kinds of IP. The reason that's important is because you get different kinds of protection under each of these. If you have a copyright over something, you get a very different kind of protection as opposed to having a patent over something or a trademark over something. Fundamentally different. First thing you need to know is what form of IP really you're looking for, what kind of protection you have under that. Okay? Let's just take the two that most people have asked about, talked about, copyrights and trademarks. Okay? Copyright. Sounds pretty straightforward, simple. what is a copyright? What is your understanding of a copyright? It's essentially the right to copy. So does that just mean that suppose I've written a story, I just have the right to make copies of the story and sell it to the public? What else?
It's your, it's as I say, the creator's right over their work.
But what can I do? So I've written the story, and I printed it out in my printer, and I photocopied it. I made 50 copies. I sold it outside the station for $20 each. Is that it?
Nobody can make rip-offs.
Sorry?
Nobody can make rip-offs from that story. Nobody can copy that story and make another story.
Okay, so here's the thing. My story, let's say, is about this guy, very young chap, and on his way to college one day, I don't know, something happens. He eats an alien egg omelette and gets superpowers and goes about beating up bad people. Somebody else makes a story like that. Is that a ripoff?
No.
Why not?
I own the right to copy it in any medium. I think that's copyright.
Okay. But what about this thing about this guy who suddenly, gets involved in some incident, gets superpowers and starts beating up bad people? That's my idea. Nobody else can write something like that.
That's a very generic thing actually. If you say a guy gets a power and he's fighting the baddies because there are a lot of superheroes. It depends on what kind of power your guy has. Has he उसको radioactive spider ने काटा and he became a Spider-Man, or is he from Krypton and he's Superman, or maybe his parents have been killed and he became Batman. So that one unique thing that you own, I think that makes your IP unique, and that makes you, that gives you the right to copy it in any other medium wherever you want. You want to make a novel, you want to make a comic, you want to make a movie, you want to make a video
game, whatever.
Anything, yeah.
Right. Great. So we've got two new things here, right? We've got two fresh new concepts. It's not just the right to reproduce it, it's the right to make adaptations of it. It's not just the question of reproducing it in any medium, but to make a derivation out of it, make a translation out of it, make an adaptation out of it. Completely different medium. That's one important thing. The second thing is the whole concept of ripping off somebody else's book. Right? 90% of the time, the doubt that you're going to have is what is the exact line that you draw. Up till here, it's fine, and past that, you're ripping off somebody else's work, or somebody else has ripped off your work. Okay? That really, I think, is one of the main things that people have been asking about. So let's just work with an actual example. I'm just going to point out to that poster that we've made. Pretty obvious that that's the name of a movie, Pati Patni Aur Wo. There's an image on the poster. So that's the name of a movie. The image is not from the actual movie poster. I'll just put that in.
Yeah, Manish.
Is this a ripoff? Okay, so I'll tell you what this is about. Okay, this is about, how many people have heard of the Nanavati case? Right? So it was about this naval officer shot his wife's lover, very famous jury trial that happened sometime back in the 60s, all of that. And that's what we want to talk about with this one. But I've taken the name of a movie. The movie was obviously owned by somebody. They had a copyright on it. I've put that down here. I've taken a whole bunch of other things. Is that a ripoff? Imagine you owned the movie, right?
But yeah, they don't own that, they don't know the title.
They own the name Pati Patni Aur Wo for a movie, for a script, for a story. They made posters for the movie. I made a poster. So far, it's pretty similar. Is this a ripoff?
Parody.
Maybe.
I don't think so, because they own the name, and this name has been registered as a name for a movie, not for a poster. You are creating a poster out of a very famous case, Nanavati.
Well, let's just hang on, just 1 second, right? You said so they own the name for the movie. Yes. Just like I owned this story idea which I printed as a book. But you said I had the right to make a video game out of it. Why can't they stop me from making educational posters out of it?
Because they're not making money.
Well, I hope to sometime soon.
But
So you were saying something?
Yeah, it is a ripoff. I would.
Okay.
Because it's a thin line between paying, it's like paying homage to something.
Also, I guess it's the context.
Right.
Somewhere, I'm sure if you were to put this up in some commercial context, they would sit up and take notice.
Possibly.
Possibly, because right now, say if it's in a like a controlled, so to speak, environment, a very private circulation kind of thing, maybe you're.
Maybe you're okay. So you got one more thing here. If it's just in private circulation, maybe it's just for education or just for research, it's fine. That's true. There is something called fair dealing. There are some exceptions. Even if you've got a copyrighted work and let's say I pick it up and I show it in a classroom, talk to students about it, show them a movie, that's fine. So there are certain exceptions there as well. And that's one more thing that we'll start talking about as well. Let's just take one more. That one there. I'm assuming since you guys are here, you know about comics as well. The image there is referenced from a very famous comic cover. It's from Mars, right? This one talks about a set of blindings that happened in Bhagalpur a couple of decades, about 3 decades ago. And you know the whole story behind that. Happy to talk to anyone about it. Is that a ripoff? You're still saying yes.
Yeah, whether they accept it as a tribute or they think that you're copying them is up to the person who owns it.
Okay, but who decides?
That's
Slightly dodgy.
yeah.
Slightly dodgy. Okay? So let's just take up each of these issues as we go along, right? First things, copyright exists in various different kinds of work. The one that most of the questions came in for come under a category called literary, dramatic, musical, artistic works. Okay? Now here's the thing. Normally when you and I talk about a literary work or dramatic or artistic work, we expect that it's actually something good. It doesn't have to be. A squiggle on a piece of paper is an artistic work. That's one thing. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is. That's not what the law is bothered about, as long as it falls under one of these categories. Here's the second thing. Like you pointed out, if I have just an idea about something, that cannot be protected. The only thing that can get protected under copyright law is if you actually express it in some form. Right? So you've got this great idea. Until the moment you write it down on a piece of paper, it is not protected. Okay? Simple thing, it's the judges who decide. Unless the judge has some way of knowing, or the court has some way of knowing that you're the guy who actually first wrote this down, there's no way he can say that you own the copyright. That's one. Putting it down, fixing it in a medium is super important. Here's the second good thing that comes out of fixing something into an actual medium. The instant you put it down in some format, the instant you fix it to a tangible medium, you have copyright over that. You don't need to do anything else. You don't have to go get it registered. You don't have to get a certificate from someone saying you own the copyright. Right? Well, that's what the law says. It doesn't work. Just because you put something down and you have copyright on it, doesn't mean that somebody can't still rip you off and get away with it. There's a whole bunch of other things that you need to be able to do if you want to protect your idea, if you want to protect your work. If you've put it down somewhere, you're taking it to show to somebody, first things first, if you're going to a media house or something like that, there are a couple of places that you can go, get a stamp, get it dated, have proof that you're the one who brought it to them first, it's registered with you. It's the Film Writers Association in Andheri that lets you do that. Unfortunately, there isn't anything really like that for people working in other industries. Like, I am not aware of any authors association like that, which is powerful, which sort of can send a notice to somebody else and stop them from doing something. Again, even the Film Writers Association doesn't really have any legal powers as such. You will generally understand it. It's an industry body, it's an industry guild. They'll probably come and help you. But whether they're going to come and help you because they're submitting your story to a publishing house or not, don't know. But what it does help you do is to show that you're the guy who wrote this down and took this to them on such and such a date. So if somebody else rips it off later, then you can stop them. Or you can at least tell them, look, I've got proof. And that's the important thing. The second thing that you should be doing